Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us your curiosity and a really fascinating collection of sources. Our mission, as always, is to pull out the core insights for you.
Yeah, make it digestible.
Exactly. So you get informed, maybe have a few aha moments without wading through, tons of text. We get straight to the heart of it, tailored for you.
And today, that heart is, well, it's ancient wisdom, isn't it? We're diving into the Isha Upanishad. It's incredibly concise, but wow, so profound. Foundational stuff for Vedanta.
Precisely. You shared commentaries, analyses. We've got perspectives from Arun Singha, the Chinmaya International Foundation, and Sri Aurobindo's work, too. So a good mix.
A really good mix.
Our goal, to unpack the big ideas in the Isha Upanishad, how they might relate to, living a fulfilling life today. We'll touch on unity, action, knowledge, reality itself.
The big questions.
Yeah, the big stuff, but
course.
hopefully in a way that's engaging and cuts through some of the complexity. Okay, so let's start with maybe the cornerstone idea. All this is Brahman.
Right. Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. It's more than just a nice philosophical thought. It's really the bedrock.
The foundation for everything else in the text.
Pretty much.
Right.
It's saying that everything we see, everything we experience, you, me, this chat, the universe, it's all fundamentally just different expressions of one single ultimate reality, Brahman.
Like waves on an ocean or characters in a play.
Exactly like that. Different forms, different masks maybe, but all arising from the same consciousness.
Okay, but then that raises a big question straight away, doesn't it? If everything is one, is Brahman, how do we deal with the world? I mean, it feels separate. We act as separate beings. Does this mean conflict isn't real or suffering?
That's the immediate practical question, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you live this? Does it mean we just stop acting?
Do we have to leave the world behind to get it?
Well, the Upanishad tackles this head-on. It introduces the concept of ego, ahakara,
Akara.
right? Which is essentially that feeling, that illusion of being separate, of being this contained, independent person.
So it's like a filter.
Sort of. It comes from the spirit's amazing ability to experience both unity and all the differences, the multiplicity. Sri Aurobindo called these vidya and avidya.
Vijnana Vidya.
Yeah, the spirit can get so caught up, that's so identified with the changing forms and experiences, what Sri Aurobindo calls nature's movement, that it kind of temporarily forgets its own underlying oneness.
Okay, so the ego isn't inherently bad. It's just a mode of experience, a limited perspective.
You could say that. It leads us to see ourselves as this independent personality, separate from the cosmos, separate from Brahman.
Which leads us nicely into Vidya and Avidya. Tell us more about those.
Right, so these are like the two powers or maybe two modes of consciousness of the spirit. Vidya is the consciousness of that essential unity, the deep knowing that all is Brahman.
Okay, the oneness consciousness.
Exactly. And avidya is the flip side of the consciousness of the world as we usually experience it. The world of multiple things, differences, phenomena perceived through our senses.
So it's not like Vidya is good and Avidya is bad or wrong.
Not at all. That's key. The spirit actually lives in both simultaneously. It's not bound by the ignorance or the illusion of separateness, even while it's fully engaged in the world of multiplicity, of avidya.
Interesting. So they work together.
Absolutely. Their interplay is crucial. Sri Aurobindo suggests this dance between unity and multiplicity is how the divine plan unfolds, and how we, as individual souls, journey through ignorance towards full knowledge and, well, immortality.
So you need both. One alone isn't the full picture.
Precisely. Neither vidya alone nor avidya alone is the complete truth. They're both seen as eternal powers, aspects of reality.
Okay, that helps make sense of how we operate in the world. Which brings us to action karma. The Upanishad says something like, do your work in the world, wish to live 100 years. Action doesn't cling to a man. That sounds pretty active.
It is. It definitely doesn't advocate dropping out. The Upanishad is clear. The problem isn't action itself.
It's the attachment to the action
Yes.
or the results.
Exactly. It's action done in ignorance, driven by selfish desires, clinging to the outcomes. That's what creates bondage. This is where nishkam karma comes in, selfless action.
Acting without being attached to the fruits of the action.
Right. If you genuinely see yourself as part of this larger whole, this Brahman, then acting purely for your own separate gain starts to feel, well, less compelling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it shifts the motivation.
Think about figures like Sri Krishna or King Janaka. They were considered enlightened. They realized Brahman, but they didn't stop acting in the world
Why not?
because their actions weren't binding. They were free from that ego-driven desire, that attachment. It makes you wonder, maybe detaching from the outcome actually makes you better at acting. Less fear, less ego getting in the way.
That's a thought. So the real letting go, the renunciation, or tiaga, it's internal.
Exactly. It's not about physically abandoning the world. It's about abandoning the grip of desire, the illusion of the separate ego. That's what allows you to truly enjoy the divine presence within the world.
Enjoyment through non-attachment.
Yes. True enjoyment, the Upanishad suggests, comes from seeing God, seeing Brahman everywhere, and crucially, not coveting things, not grasping. It's about letting go of that small, limited self, the mind, the senses tied to ego, to kind of align with a bigger purpose.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, shifting gears slightly, what about the soul's journey? Does the Upanishad talk about what happens, after this life?
It does touch on it. It outlines sort of 3 states for the soul concerning the universe. There's our current life here on Earth.
Right.
Then there's the survival after death, continuing in other states or realms.
Okay.
And finally, there's the ultimate goal, immortal existence beyond birth and death altogether.
Does it mention rebirth explicitly?
It's strongly implied, especially when it talks about how our state of consciousness at the moment of death influences where we go next.
Sure.
It's quite something to think that our mindset right then could be so pivotal.
So our thoughts and desires at the end really matter.
Immensely, according to this view. If the mind is full of negativity, fear, that kind of thing, it might lead to what it calls dark worlds, maybe states of suffering.
And if it's focused on higher things?
Well, if someone's attached to higher desires, maybe noble goals or heavenly pleasures, they might go to worlds of light and pleasure, like a paradise. But potentially, they might return from there too.
So still within the cycle.
Potentially. Then there are those who've really connected with the bliss of the self, the Atman. They could reach the highest state, Brahmaloka, maybe even transcending the cycle entirely.
But the ultimate aim is?
The ultimate aim is to realize, while you're still alive, that your individual self is the supreme self, is Brahman, to become God, essentially, and thus go beyond all these states.
Wow. Okay. Now the very first word of the Upanishad is Isha, Lord. Why start there? What's the significance?
Starting with Isha is huge.
Yeah.
It immediately sets the tone, recognize the Lord's presence, his will, his energy in absolutely everything.
And this Lord, Isha, it's not quite the same as the absolute unmanifest Brahman.
Good point. No, it's generally understood here not as the actionless absolute para-Brahman or even just the pure bliss consciousness, Sachidananda. It's specifically the supreme being as the ruler, the governor of the universe, Maheshwara, the one who directs the whole cosmic show.
Okay. And how does Maya, usually translated as illusion, fit in with Isha?
Well, Maya here isn't necessarily just illusion in a negative sense. It's more like the very substance, the power, the medium through which the Lord manifests the universe. And it's the field where the karma margin, the person seeking liberation through action, works.
So you work within Maya, but you're looking for the Lord.
Exactly. You're navigating this apparent multiplicity, this phenomenal world, but constantly seeking and finding the Lord's presence within it all. The universe itself is called a habitation for the Lord. We're meant to see everything as sort of clothed or enveloped by him.
Which brings us back to that central tension, doesn't it? One reality, Brahman, yet this incredibly diverse universe. How does the Upanishad resolve that apparent contradiction?
It clarifies that the oneness isn't contradicted by the multiplicity. Rather, the oneness is the basis for it. It's the fundamental truth that underlies and supports all the variety.
So the universe isn't unreal.
No, the universe, all the becomings, are seen as expressions of the one being. But the inner self, the Atman, and all the external forms are ultimately Brahman. You don't dismiss one in favor of the other. It's sometimes called a pluralistic unity.
Pluralistic unity. I like that. The one playing in many forms.
Precisely.
And love. Where does love fit into this framework? Because that feels so central to so many spiritual paths.
It fits perfectly, really. The Upanishad, like many traditions, implies that realizing this fundamental oneness naturally leads to love. Vedanta gives it a philosophical grounding.
How so?
By showing that there's only one self residing in all beings, our perceived separation is, well, illusory. So when you truly grasp that the self in someone else is the same self that's in you.
Altruism becomes natural.
Exactly. It stops being just a moral rule you follow. It becomes a spontaneous expression of that interconnectedness. Caring for another person is, in a very real sense, caring for a broader aspect of your own self.
That's a powerful way to look at it. Now, there's also this mention of Matara Swan and the waters Apa. What's going on there? It sounds a bit cryptic.
It can seem that way. Matara Swan is generally taken to mean the vital energy, prana, Vayu, the life force that animates everything. And it's said to set the waters.
And the waters, what are they?
Well, that's where interpretations differ a bit. Some see Epa, the waters, as the primordial substance, the fundamental stuff from which all forms arise, like the raw potential.
Okay.
Others, like Shankara, for instance, sometimes interpret waters metaphorically as actions, or the flow of works. The idea is that this vital energy, Matrois 1, acts upon this basic potential or field of action to bring forth creation.
So mattress one is the energy, the waters are the substance or the field.
That's a common way to understand it. It points to creation or evolution as this dynamic process, originating from a unified source, driven by this vital breath or energy. Different schools might nuance the symbols, but the core idea of dynamic manifestation from unity is there.
It definitely feels like the Isha Upanishad is pushing us beyond just, thinking about these things,
And
beyond
so-
pure intellect.
Oh, absolutely. The whole Vedantic tradition really stresses the limits of logic and intellect when you're trying to grasp ultimate reality. The real emphasis is on Anubhav, direct, personal experience.
Experience over theory.
In a sense, yes. True wisdom, Jana, isn't just knowing about Brahman, it's realizing the self, experiencing that unity directly. You see this in the Upanishad style, too. It often aims for synthesis, harmony, bringing different viewpoints together, rather than building these rigid, purely logical, philosophical systems that sometimes end up excluding things.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into the Isha Upanishad, what are the main takeaways, the key things you hope our listener carries forward?
Well, first, that foundational truth, the essential unity of everything is Brahman. That's number one.
Right.
Second, understanding the ego, ahakara, not as the enemy, but as this illusion of separateness that we need to see through, to transcend.
Okay.
Third, the importance of nishkam karma, selfless action, and that true renunciation is internal letting go of selfish desire, which actually allows for a more fulfilled life in the world.
Living fully but without attachment.
Exactly. Fourth, the soul's journey is ultimately about realizing its true divine nature, its identity with the self.
Mhm.
And finally, perhaps, cultivating that constant awareness of the Lord's presence, Isha, in every single thing, seeing the universe as his habitation. That really shifts your perspective on everything.
It really does. It's clear this isn't just philosophy for the bookshelf. The Isha Upanishad seems to offer a very practical path for living differently, more divinely, you could say, right here, right now.
Absolutely. It's about embodying the wisdom, not just knowing it, bringing that understanding of unity and non-attachment into your daily life.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener. Thinking about all this, the interconnectedness, the illusion of the separate ego, how might actively watching your own ego and maybe making a conscious effort towards more selfless action actually reshape your day-to-day interactions, your choices, and, well, your own journey of discovery?
Yeah, how would that change things?
Definitely something worth contemplating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.